welcome back to your Bestie in Freight, the place where we talk about real stories, the real work, and the real people who move this industry forward. I am your host, Lida, and my guest today is Andrew Weimer, Director of Operation at Discord's Macro Point. Andrew oversees the implementation, activation, and support of technology used by thousands of freight brokers and carriers across the logistics industry. He has been at the intersection of operation, technology, and customer success for nearly a decade, which gives him a front row seat to how AI is actually being used in real-world logistics environment. So in this episode, we are gonna talk about how AI is being implemented today, where it is delivering real value, and what that means for logistics leaders moving forward. Andrew, thank you so much for joining me. I'm excited to have you.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Leah. Excited to be on here. This is fun.
Yes. I had another interview from Discord, so we discussed everything about fraud and what you guys are doing. But today I really want to dive into AI. So Discord has been in logistics tech long before AI became a buzzword. How has your technology approach evolved as AI and machine learning became more practical at scale?
Yeah, so like you mentioned, Descartes has been around for a long time, several decades. MacroPoint specifically has been around for over 15 years at this point. And as AI has become more prominent and, especially in the freight tech and logistics industry, we saw a very big opportunity for us to deploy agentic AI within different work streams and workflows with the MacPoint app specifically, but then also more broadly within Descartes. There's a lot of manual tasks today that freight brokers have to do and shippers have to do when it comes to real-time visibility. There's processes through MacroPoint workflows that trigger operational tasks, not because tracking is not working, but saying, hey, once a milestone's achieved, notify this operator at this broker at this shipper to validate, hey, driver arrived at this facility based on MacroPoint data. Are they actually getting offloaded? Did they get rejected, etc.? So there's all these different aspects to, let's say, low value, minimal revenue driving activity that AI can optimize and eliminate humans having to do that type of role and allow them to focus on more high value revenue generating work, and that's where we've been investing our time.
Yes, you kind of answered my next question, Andrew. I was gonna ask, when we talk about AI inside the car today, where is it actually being used in production? Not as an idea, but in live customer operation. Can you please give us more examples? So, because people have a issue understanding where it actually can be, helpful. So,
Yeah.
I would love to have more examples.
Yeah. So today we've several different AI agents within MacroPoint. The first one, and we personify them just to make it a little bit easier to understand, and I think having a name to them is helpful. So our first one is Debbie. She helps drivers with the MacPoint for Truckers mobile app. So there are, even though you and I take installing an app on a phone for granted and easy, there are drivers out there and people in general who have a hard time with that, or have a hard time finding the link or configuring their settings correctly. Things that we think are simple, but people struggle with. So Debbie helps them get the link, walk them through configuring the app so that it is set up correctly and we're able to get the location data that our customers need, and so that then no one's bothering them throughout the life of their shipment. So that one's operational today. It's in flight. It's deployed across our entire customer base, whether they know it or not, just because it ultimately helps with the user experience, the adoption, and the compliance that our customers are expecting. The second agent that is deployed and operational is Chuck. We did a little alliteration with Chuck call Chuck. So if there's ever a gap in tracking for whatever reason, so the app is installed on the phone, or we're tracking through a telemax device, but for whatever reason we're not receiving data, the driver could have uninstalled the app or disabled location services. They turned off their phone, or for whatever reason the ELD is not transmitting location data. There's a plethora of different reasons that happens. Chuck steps in, calls the driver, says, "Hey, we saw that you successfully enabled MacroPoint. Previously, we were getting data. Something happened. Can I get a check call from you to see, hey, where are you? Just so we don't have that lapse in tracking." But then help them reinstall, reconfigure their method of tracking so that we don't have to keep following up and that our customers don't have to follow up. Like Chuck's workflow is not to continuously barrage and badger the drivers for updates. It's to get one update when there's a gap and then help them get back onto autonomous tracking so that, again, we're not bothering them.
Yes. Is it okay if I interrupt on chat?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
because English is not my first language, right? Anytime I try to talk to AI agent or even like just human beings, sometimes they don't understand. But mostly I would say this AI agent. So, do you guys have anything? Because drivers are very diverse and they speak different English. How do you guys make sure that AI understands what they are talking?
Yeah. That is a challenge for sure. Right. So we started with English. Um, there is paths to enabling multilingual workflows. I would say based on the transcripts of the recordings I've listened to, there's a lot of drivers who English is not their first language, and Debbie and Chuck are able to work with that driver, through broken English or words that aren't commonly used to get to the end result. It's a little bit longer conversation of as I listen to them than a normal fluent English is a first language driver, but there is success there. But next is then obviously supporting multilingual workflows, right? Like we have a very large presence in Mexico. It's important that we're able to support Spanish. We have a presence in Europe. There's some GDPR regulations that we have to follow there, but there's dozens of different languages that are something that we need to make sure that we can support because we want to deploy these agents over there. That it's not deployed today in Europe, but it's where we want to go. So
Yeah, that's amazing.
coming.
Okay, who is coming after Chuck? Do you have anyone?
Uh,
I
well,
remember.
there is one more who's live. Sean, he's our support agent within the application itself. So if you're logged into MacroPoint and in our control tower and operating and viewing all your data, and for whatever reason you have a question or I need troubleshooting on this specific shipment. Before it was like a support portal that you would go through, and now there's an actual AI agent that helps with troubleshooting through a dialog box. So he's out there helping our customers that operate out of our user interface. But yeah, coming next, there are 3 active in development. The first one is Ava. She is our arrival departure validator, who would work in tandem with a second agent called Maya, who is a documentation collector, if you will. I think we need to clarify her definition. But what I mean they work in tandem is that when we detect a driver has arrived at a facility through our existing geofencing that's been out there forever, it triggers a workflow for Ava to then say, "Hey, I see that you've arrived at the location for delivery for a certain customer. Are you actually getting offloaded? What time did you actually check in? Did you get rejected? Did you just drive by the facility and the geofence, was too big and is inaccurately marked?" All those different use cases she solves and say, "Yep, I'm getting offloaded. Here's the actual time of truck to dock." Versus, "No, I'm actually in line. I haven't been touched yet," or, "No, I got rejected. I have to come back tomorrow." Ava came out of our customer base with a customer saying, "Hey, this is something that we would like MacroPoint to solve. We rely on your geofencing today for automating the arrivals and departures from stops. But again, that kicks off an operational workflow for our brokers to say, okay, now go and make sure that we're getting accurate unload load times, get documentation as quickly as possible. We shouldn't have a human doing that. AI should be able to do that. So then we developed Ava to support that, and then Maya also helps with the POD capturing. So drivers can upload PODs or lumper receipts or whatever type of documentation is relevant on a shipment. They can upload that through a mobile app or through a website or through an API call. But they help capture that from drivers, so that again we're streamlining and automating all of this human, low value, not revenue generating work, so our customers can focus on the important stuff.
Yes, that's amazing, Andrew. I love it. How did you guys decide the names? I noticed that many of them are females. I guess you associate females with
That's
data
right.
collection, right?
No, no.
You should give females more leadership roles, but I feel like you gave assistant roles.
No. There's one other one, Dean, who I didn't talk about. He's like a data quality, like helping clean up bad phone numbers and truck numbers. We're 50-50 split of women and men names, with Dean, Chuck, and Sean. So there's a combination of, alliteration with, it's just easy to remember, like check call Chuck,
Yes.
that makes people smile because it's kind of corny. And then there's other ones where, like, Debbie is a homage to one of the founding members of MacroPoint. That's his mother's name. Not just kind of a nice, not everyone knows this, that Debbie was an important factor into this person's life. So it's kind of fun to incorporate that into the product. So there's not overthinking to it, but yeah, there's some stuff tied to it.
Andrew, so I have been trying to like check different TMS, and I personally use your TMS, right? Because FreightTech is providing me, but I was also looking my own, and your pricing is comparably higher than other TMS. Do you think with implementation of AI, is it gonna grow higher or it's gonna be a little bit more affordable?
No, I don't think the pricing of the platform itself would change based on the AI models and the AI functionality that we deploy into it. As we think about AI, we look at it as a agent force, or we call it op force, that can be deployed across multiple products, not just MacroPoint. It's starting in MacroPoint because there's a lot of easy workflows there and need, but we see it deploying across Aljax workflows, and these agents also deploying across my carrier portal workflows, because a lot of our customers like FreightTech utilize multiple products together. Obviously our products integrate well together. It's the whole point of us being one company. And then pricing the agent and the ops force as a layered on feature set across the entire ecosystem, not saying, hey, Aljax is going to become more expensive because it's AI enabled. I don't think that would be the path forward we take.
Yes, that's amazing news, Andrew. So let's go back to fraud because it is also a hot topic. I think after AI fraud and scamming and stolen loads are the next hot topic in logistics. So with fraud and spoofing becoming more sophisticated, how is AI being used to detect that traditional visibility tools would miss?
Yeah. So I think we're very careful with how AI is incorporated into fraud detection. So it's not, foolproof. It's not a fail safe. A lot of different AI applications in general and in the industry rely on platforms like my carrier portal or MacroPoint to validate who the agent is talking to is legitimate. Right? Like they're not, the AI itself is not the one that's determining that. There's integrations that they hit endpoints to various products. So, how we're taking an approach to fraud, two front, my carrier portal being, the front and center of like knowing who your carrier is, understanding risk signals associated to a carrier. VIN validation is making sure that a VIN is associated to that specific carrier. It's on their certificate of insurance, as well as tying that VIN into the MacroPoint ELD network and making sure that that VIN's associated to that ELD that's registered with that driver, or excuse me, with that carrier. There's a lot of levels of ensuring you know who you are potentially booking a shipment with is the correct person. And then within MacroPoint, how these work together is we have a product called Fraud Guard, or a feature called Fraud Guard that all of our customers just have. It wasn't an additional feature or upsell or anything like that. It's just, hey, we need all of our customers to have this. It's very important. We think it would benefit all of them just by having data on understanding, carrier behavior. And part of it is the pre-tender workflow of making sure, again, who you're tendering the carrier, who you're booking the shipment with, and saying the rate confirmation to is legitimate, and giving you all the facts of that carrier as it pertains to the MacroPoint network. And we have 14 years now of data that we've collected on DOTs, on driver phone numbers, vehicles. It's very rare now to have a carrier who's never tracked on MacroPoint, and even a driver who's never tracked on MacroPoint. So if you're looking to book a shipment, checking that DOT within MacroPoint in our lookup and saying, hey, they've never done a shipment with MacroPoint, or maybe they've done 20,000 shipments with MacroPoint. We light that up, as well as say, hey, how many active assets are tracking in MacroPoint against how many registered units they have with the FMCSA and the DOT. And saying, hey, something might be off if they only have 20 registered trucks with the FMCSA, but they have 200 active tracking sessions across the MacroPoint ecosystem. That either could be an indicator of potential fraud, or really an indicator of double brokering, where, hey, we're associating that same carrier across 15 different customers. If they really only have 20 trucks, like the math doesn't math. Yeah. Another use case there is we anonymize just lane data. So we say, hey, for this DOT or even this phone number, what are the top 10 lanes that this carrier or this driver has taken across the entire ecosystem of MacroPoint? And let's say, hey, they primarily run in the Southeast, but you have a shipment that's booking Pacific Northwest. Doesn't mean that they don't have a truck there, but it should be a flag. Just let me do a little bit more investigation. Is this carrier who they say they are? It looks like you only run Georgia, Florida, Alabama, the Carolinas, etc. Like it gives our customers the ability to get a little bit deeper into that carrier behavior and what makes sense for them. So combining MacroPoint and MCP together really helps, I think, light that up.
Yeah. You kind of answered my next question, but I'm still gonna ask. So where do you draw the line between what AI should decide and where humans still need to stay in the loop?
AI and just the platforms in general arm the tools, or arm the humans with the tools and the data. I think where AI helps is to paint the picture of the data in a quick, digestible format, so you're not having to sift through trying to figure out what makes sense, where should I be looking, what data point makes sense. Rather, hey, I put in a variable or an identifier or a truck or a phone number, whatever. Here's the data associated to that. Here are the risk signals that might indicate potential fraud, or say absolutely there's fraud associated to this. But then the human has to take over and do the actual validation, right? Like
Yes.
I don't think that the AI is at a spot where, and this is across any AI, agentic AI company, to make that decision on behalf of the customer. There's a human element of really taking that data, analyzing it, and then having a conversation like this to ask the appropriate questions.
Yes, I like that you mentioned that, because in real life practice, I have noticed that just relying on AI and technology, and many carriers who are legitimate, they get denied.
Oh, yeah.
But and many that are not legitimate, they don't get denied just because on paper they look good. So I think that's very important to have this line between what should AI decide and where human can still make a decision.
Yeah. Yeah, we're very cognizant of the carrier experience when it comes to this. MacroPoint wouldn't exist if we didn't build out a deep relationship with the carrier community, and we don't take it for granted. We invest in that. And even one of our employees, their spouse is an owner operator who's ELD exempt, and it is a hurdle for him to get validated in certain platforms and certain workflows that our customers might be using, or his customers might be using. When he's really a legitimate carrier, he's a high quality carrier, handles high value cargo, but because of his equipment type and where he hauls, he doesn't have to follow certain general guidelines. So we want to make sure that drivers like him aren't excluded from obtaining freight to stay in business and operate and earn a living, and giving our customers guided controls of how they assess risk within their carrier network, how they allow what carriers can book and which can't, and then again give them the tools to validate different checkpoints, and different variables, to then again take a human element and say, yes, you pass, or I'll give you the shipment, or no, you don't, because of X, Y, and Z data points.
That's very interesting that you mentioned, because I had the exact example that he was, not using ELD, and I had to convince our compliance team and send the law that we can still work with him. And yes, it took a while, but eventually we got it done. It's just a little bit unfair, for those guys who doesn't meet all of these criteria. It's very hard for them to, operate in this market, especially, it's very competitive. And if as a freight broker, I have two carriers and one taking forever to get set up and another one is just like getting set up, I'm gonna choose the one that is faster. But I feel like it is also unfair, right? Because, yeah.
Yeah, it's unfair. Unfortunately, the market hasn't been in the favor of the carrier, so carriers are going to do what they need to do to get shipments. But I am a believer that if and when the market shifts to be tighter and capacity becomes tighter, I think that there will be more pushback on the carrier community around who they're working with, who has treated them fairly from a broker perspective in the past versus who took advantage of them or didn't treat them fairly, even though they're high quality, legitimate carriers. And I think the people who have spent the last several years investing in the relationships and treating carriers fairly will be fine, but the ones who don't, it might be a little bit tough.
I agree. So, Andrew, from an operations standpoint, what is harder, building advanced AI models or getting companies ready to use them correctly? Because we can add all of these tools, but if the user cannot use them correctly, then it doesn't make any point, right?
Yeah. Probably building them. I'd say building them's harder, because if you can build them correctly into a quality that enterprise companies like Freight Tech can leverage them, there shouldn't be a lot of training and operational baggage that comes with that, right? Like the whole point of them is to minimize the operational tasks that our customers have to do. So if we can continue to develop them in a way that it does provide high quality results for our customers, yes, there is some training. It's more coaching of understanding what they do and where they fit into the workflow versus like troubleshooting or anything like that. I think we'll be fine. So yeah, I would say it's harder to build them than to train.
Yeah. Okay, Andrew, so looking ahead 2 to 3 years, what capability do you think will become non-negotiable in logistics platforms because of AI?
It's a good question. 2 to 3 years from now, non-negotiables, I would say a lot of the back office tasks with the TMS execution, obviously tracking, but like everything from POD capturing through like invoicing, process payments, freight validation, audit, all of the stuff that is redundant work that humans do today that is not customer facing, not relationship building, not revenue generating, but is still wildly important to a business, I think all of that will be solved or minimized with AI, like minimized in the way of humans doing it. I think it'll be a non-negotiable because I don't think it'll make sense to invest in a significant headcount of humans doing this type of work that really could be solved through AI. I don't believe that customer sales, carrier sales can be 100% done through AI. I don't think it makes sense. Even carrier sales, because I know that that's out in the industry today. I still believe there's a relationship component to it. I brokered freight for several years. Like, I understand that I did carrier sales. You get your best rates, you get your best service through relationships, and you can't do that through AI, right? Like, it's just not going to build that.
Actually, got a new business idea. What about we create AI agents and we can create a relationship with that AI agents? Do you think it will work?
I don't know. We'll see. Yeah. So far, they have the ones that I've heard. Um, they're not very good at the relationship piece and the small talk. They're very task logical, efficient.
That was of course a joke, but Andrew, thank you so much. This has been such a valuable and honest conversation. Thank you for breaking this down in a way that's practical and real because there is a lot of skepticism, and that was my goal to. In real life, to show the examples that AI can be useful in logistics and what you guys are doing. And one thing that really stood out to me is AI isn't here to remove complexity from logistics and people, right? People who are valuable and building relationships and growing revenue are still needed in this industry. And AI is here to just absorb it so operators can make better decisions without being buried in, different everyday tasks that, we can oversee. So for brokers, shippers, and logistics leaders listening, the takeaway isn't to chase AI buzzwords. It is to understand where intelligence is already being built into the systems you rely on every day. And again, Andrew, thank you again for sharing your insight, and thank you everyone for listening. And if this episode gave you a new perspective on how AI is actually working behind the scene in logistics, make sure to subscribe, share it with someone on your team, and drop your questions or thoughts in the comments. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Bye.
Okay.